Hi, good morning guys, thanks for joining me. I hope everyone's well, hope everyone's having a nice week and enjoying this little bit of sun that we're having. So what I thought we'd do in today's video, let's talk about sharpening hook knives and carving knives and that kind of thing. I've had a few inquiries after the last video where I showed the kit, and people were interested in how I sharpen the hook knives after showing you the Ben Orford sharpening kit. So like I said to the people who left the comments, have a look on Ben Orford's website or have a look on his YouTube channel. Loads of good information on there about sharpening all his tools. But I did say, I've run through the set which I own and also how it is that I like to do it. So throughout the week, this week I've been carving a few spoons. Nothing fancy, just a couple of rustic spoons, one out of birch. I've done sycamore and willow, that kind of thing. And this one here, I've just added just a little bit of a lanyard from the bramble cordage, which we made in the bramble cordage video. So the knives themselves do need a little bit of attention. They're not unsharp by any stretch of the imagination. They're so on tool steel. Certainly does hold an edge, but like I was saying, we're just going to run through how I like to use the kit and how I like to sharpen the tools. So when it comes to maintaining the edges on things like the hook knives or perhaps your straight carving knife and that kind of thing, I opted to go with one of Ben's sharpening kits which he makes. And in all fairness, there's loads of different things out there on the market. I know that King make a set of tools so that you can get on the inside edge of hook knives. Also, at one time IKEA was selling a ceramic sharpener, again which a lot of people were using just to get on the inside of that edge there on the hook knives. But the little set which Ben's made has been designed specifically for this kind of thing. If it says that I want to sharpen the edge on a straight knife, if I'm out in the field like I am today, then I will use a little sharpening stick here which he makes. But if it says that I'm in the house, then I sometimes opt to put them on the stone. It's just a little bit quicker, and also it just means then that I can save this kit what it's been designed for, which is the hook knives. So the kit which Ben makes, he makes these little sharpening sticks or little sharpening boards. They're made out of oak, nice solid little platform. And then the two different sorts, one comes with wet and dry paper which can be swapped out as and when the paper gets used, or if it says that you need to do any more heavier work, you can just change the paper over to the coarser grit. And then on the little strop here, he's put a very thin leather, again which just wraps all the way around so that you can get onto the inside edge, and that's perfect for stropping both the hook knives and also the flat knives. So the compound which I like to use anything like Autosol or Tormek, but obviously you can put whatever compound it is that you use on these kind of strops. And then the paper which comes with the kit, they come all the way from a 240 to 1200, again dependent on the kind of work that it says that needs to be done. You can change the paper very, very easily. And all I've done with this, I've just wrapped it around and just used a couple of bands on it. You could use that spray mount, or you could just use a piece of tape or anything like that. Like I say, in these boards, very, very simple to make if you want to make your own. Just give you there just a bit of a close-up. Just a nice flat board, and just put a nice radius just around the edge there. So the length of the board's around about 230mm. The wide section there for the stropping and the sharpening is 35mm, and they're around about 10mm in thickness there. So like I was saying, if it is that you want to make your own, those are the kind of dimensions that Ben's using. So if we just quickly take a look at how it is that I do the straight carving knives or the straight bladed knives, it's just the same way really as I do a belt knife. So carving knives, loads of different sorts on the market. This one here is just one of the little Mora carving knives, so if it is that you're looking for something inexpensive but very, very good, these carving knives I can vouch for, they're absolutely brilliant. So it's a laminate steel, very easy to sharpen when it needs to be sharpened, but the majority of the time, just like belt knives, I'll probably just put them on the strop just to see if I can get the edge back that way before putting them on paper, stones and that kind of thing, and removing a lot of the metal. So the first thing that I want to do is put some of the compound on the strop itself, and this one here is just a cheap little double-sided strop which I carry in the carving set. And this one I do like because you've got this straight edge. It just means then that when it comes to stropping the knife, that you can actually get all the way to the edge of the bevel there, and sometimes when you're using the radius of the board, it just doesn't quite grip just the very back edge of the knife here. So like I say, I use this one mainly when I'm in the field, but if I was at home, again if I was going to put this on any kind of stone, it just means then you can get right to the back of the blade there, where if you're going to use one of these little boards you might be struggling. It's okay for when you're down in the woods, when you're just doing any kind of carving and you just want to pick the edge back up, but if it is that you want to make that flat all the way down, then like I say, I prefer to put it on a stone and do it that way. So the first thing, like I say, I'm going to put some of the compound on the strop. just put just a little bit just on the leather like so, and then we're just going to rub it just into the leather itself. And one thing I do like about this Tormek and also Auto Sol, when it dries it does clean out of the strop quite easily, like some of the blocks which you get which kind of clog all the leather up. Once this dries, it dries pretty much like a powder and it comes out of the leather, you know, quite easily. So once you've got the surface covered like so, I'll give it just a few seconds just let it just to start dry just a little bit. And then, like I was saying, just like the belt knife, just making sure that we go away from the leather and not cutting into the leather. Just putting the knife on flat, finding the angle, and I'm just going to push down, making sure that we cover all of that blade. And you can also count how many strokes you do it. You can do perhaps 20 on one side and then 20 on the other, just to make sure that everything's nice and even. So once you've done your 20 strokes there, just reverse it back, just putting the knife flat again, just on the board, and then tilting it down just so that you find the angle, and then just drawing it back up. Just making sure again that we cover all that edge. And then if you want to, once you've done your 20 on either side, sometimes just concentrate just more on the tip with these little carving knives, just to get them razor sharp. And the beauty about the leather is the angle doesn't have to be perfect, because the leather itself compresses and will follow the shape of the steel. But one thing that you've got to understand with it is the more that you do strop, is the more that the edge itself will start to round, because as that leather's compressing you'll start to get more of a convex kind of angle just as you're passing it just over the strap. So once you're done, just wipe off any excess with a rag. And then as you can see there, you do get a real polished edge by using these kind of compounds, and just touching that just with the fingers I can really feel how sharp that knife is anyway. So if I was going to be using that knife, I perhaps wouldn't put it on the paper or put it on the stone. There's not much point in removing loads of metal when it's not needed. Perhaps if there was a dink in it or a flat spot, then I perhaps just want to work it out before stropping. But like I say, if you can keep on top of it, every now and again, just putting it on paper or the stone just to flatten that bevel back down. But whilst I'm carving, I tend to just keep things nice and sharp as I'm using them, and that way then it's always in good working order. Plus you're not removing loads of metal every single time. Okay, so that was straightforward, just like sharpening the belt knife really. If it was that there was more damage, or perhaps I needed to do a bit more work, then I would have put that knife on the stone prior to stropping. So the same thing applies with the hook knives. It's not always a case of having to use stones or using paper and that kind of thing. These knives themselves at the moment are still relatively sharp. Like I said, I have been using them throughout the week, but just for the demo we will start off by using the paper. But again, you just check the knife itself just by having the light just coming from behind, and if you've got any kind of flat spots or any light bouncing back, then you know that you'd have to get them out just by using the paper. So the first thing which we're going to do is mark the bevel, and on these kind of hook knives the bevel is just on one side, so it's on the outside of these knives, and on the inside it's perfectly flat. There's some knives where you can get the bevel on the inside, or you can get a double beveled knife, but just to keep things nice and easy, like I say, I went with the single bevel on these, and this is the way which we're going to sharpen them. So the marker is just a bog standard Sharpie, and then we're just going to colour in just the bevel itself, just Just taking your time that you get everything nice and covered. So we know then that as long as we're removing the pen, we're getting everything in the right place. And then if you wanted to, you could mark just on the inside, just like so. And then I'm just going to clear all this stuff away, and I'm just going to make a start just on using the paper and the board here. So the paper which we're going to use to start off with, we're going to go straight to the 1200. If there was any kind of damage to the knife, or perhaps it needed quite a bit more work, then you could come down to 600, something like that, and then work your way back up to the 1200. I do say it as a 1200, it has been used quite a bit, so it's probably more like a 1400, 1600, something like that. But even though it is going to look like it's quite aggressive, it doesn't remove very much. Like I say, it is quite a smooth piece of paper. So the first side which you want to do is the inside. If it is that you've got any kind of damage or burrs, then there's a good chance that it will have been pushed up onto the inside edge. So for that, I'm just going to use just the side of the paper here. It's just a case of making sure that it's perfectly flat against the flat edge, and then you can just work your way down, just removing that pen all the way down just into that curve there, making sure that it's all nice and flat. But one tip which Ben does give you, which is a good tip, is just to use just a little scrap piece of wood, and it means that you can use that then as a little piece like an anvil, and it just holds the work nice and firm for you. It just means then that you can make sure that everything's nice and even. And then once you've removed all that pen, you know that inside edge has been flattened down. So we're just going to turn the knife over, and I'm just going to make a start just on the outside edge. But instead of using the thin side part of the paper there, we're going to use the flat board. And then again, some people like to hold them and draw the paper back towards themselves. Some people like to look at the edge itself and actually put the board on top. But it's just important that you don't actually cut the knife into the paper. Apart from the fact it's going to damage the paper, it will also damage just the edge of the knife itself. So I like just holding it so that the cutting edge is away from me. I can just make sure then that I've got the correct angle, and then we're just going to do exactly the same kind of thing. We're just going to run this paper all the way down the edge. If it is that you're only removing the pen from the back edge of where you've marked it, it means then that the angle isn't quite right. It just means that you've got to drop the angle down. And the same thing applies if it is that you're just removing the pen from the very tip of the cutting edge itself, and it means then that the angle isn't quite correct. So that's the beauty about marking the bevel, just giving you a good visual indicator. And then you just rotate the knife just so that you can make sure that you're removing everything, and just so that you can see what it is that you're removing the pen. And that then has been removed all the way around. When you're happy that the pen's been removed all the way around, just like so, it's then just a case of just concentrating on the back side again, because where we've been using the paper, there's a good chance that we put a small burr just on the back of the steel again. So just following the same process, I'm just going to mark just the back of the knife again, just like so, and then we're just going to very gently just use just that thin inside edge, and then I'm just going to remove any slight burr which may be just on the inside of this edge. just like so. So that then is the paper and board finished. We can then just move on to the next stage, which is stropping. So again, we're going to put the compound on the board. Making sure that we go down the edge of the strop as well. And then we're going to follow exactly the same kind of procedure. Just going to make sure that we push the strop away from the cutting edge and just polish this edge right up and remove any little micro burrs that there may be. And like I said, with the straight knife, you don't have to be as precise with this because the leather will follow the shape of what the steel is. But obviously you just want to make sure that you can do the best job that you can do. But again, if it is that you want to keep the tool just a little bit higher up, this is the cutting edge here. I can just turn the tool around so it faces myself, and then I can just rest it just on this little block of wood. Just gives you just a little bit more support. And that there is that front bevel. Nicely polished. Not sure if the camera can pick that up. But then it's just a case now of doing the inside edge. So we've already put the compound on the edge of the strop, so just making sure that everything's nice and flat. I'm just going to work the inside edge. Again, just removing any little micro burrs and just making sure that we get right into this part of the curve just down here. Like so. But if it is that you don't want to go with one of these kind of sharpening systems, like I say, very simple. You can just buy just a piece of pine board. You can get them from B&Q, home base, them kind of things. Very similar in width and diameter. It's just a case of just cutting the length. Or one thing which I did, which I've always found very useful, is just this round piece of dowel here with a piece of leather on it, and just a similar kind of thing. It just means that we can get right onto the inside edge here when it comes to any kind of stropping. And this was the first thing which I made before buying one of these little kits, and you know, it worked really well on the Mora knives. So I'm just showing you, you don't have to go and buy expensive kits or buy expensive bits of kit. You can make them to suit the tools that you're using. If you're not going to be using these knives a great deal, there's not much point in spending £50–60 on kits and that kind of thing. If you can get away with buying just a little bit of dowel and just gluing just a little bit of leather to it. So like I say, that's the edge now finished off. I'm quite happy with that. It's all nicely polished, all them scratch marks have been removed. It's just a case of just finding just a little piece of wood and just seeing how it cuts. And then just whilst I'm checking just what that edge is working like, I'm using pretty much all of the blade, so just starting off at this back end here. And basically how it works, the deeper you want it to go into the wood, the more you come round onto the curve itself. So just to start off with, for a shallower little cut, you just use the back of the knife, and as you want it to go deeper, you'd use more of that curve itself. But this is cutting quite nicely. This is just a piece of sycamore, so it is a softish wood anyway, but with it being a green wood, we've got to make sure that we look after the tools once we finish the carving. So one of the things which is what I do normally is just give it just a quick strop, and then just apply some oil, and then wrap it up and put it away. So before we put it away into the little tool roll, we're just going to dry off any moisture which has come out of the green wood. Like I was saying, with this being an 01 tool steel, the last thing you'd want to do after putting all that work in is finding out that it had rusted whilst in the bag. So the oil which I use is just one of these little ballast pens. It's going to give it a nice liberal coating. And then we can just rub that onto the metal, and then we know that that's going to be protected until next time. And then this is one of the bindings which Ben gives you, which are quite nice and very easy to put on. Just put it just over the top like so, and you can just wrap it back down to the bottom. Pull that tight, and that's the edge nicely covered up. Okay, just before we finish the video off, I just thought I'd show you just the difference between the two hook knives. The one which we sharpened this morning has got this pronounced curve on it, compared to the other one which I recently purchased, which was that flatter curve with the hybrid handle. And the difference being, when it comes to doing any kind of honing or sharpening, obviously with that being more of an open sweep, it is a little bit easier. You can pretty much treat just that outside edge like you would do a straight knife. You can pretty much just get all that stropped just in one movement. And then when it comes to just finishing off just that inside edge, then you can just get into that just by using just a thinner part of the strop there. So all in all, it is a little bit easier to work with. So perhaps if you're just starting off, it might be a good suggestion, if you're worried about sharpening these kind of things, is buying a knife with more of an open sweep. If it is that you want to carve deeper things like cups and cookses and that kind of thing, then you're going to be looking for more of a pronounced curve on the knife. So there we have it, guys. I hope I didn't make that too complicated. I hope you could see what was going on. The process itself is quite simple. It just needs a little bit of practice, really. I'm just going to get the kettle fired up. I'm going to spend the rest of the day now doing a little bit of carving, enjoying this bit of fresh air, back and work first thing in the morning. So like always, you just leave me say thanks a lot for you stopping by and watching the video. Like always, until next time, you take care, and I'll see you again.